in school you had to take the course of economics, at least for me, and if you are like me, it was a subject that, while sort of interesting, it never fully captured my attention because you don't get to see first-hand experience of how transactions flow and work over time. And while yes, this is a strange way to start out an anime review, this is what one might also say about an anime that covers the flow and movement of economics through trade. And yes, it may sound boring for that of an anime, but with the use of very enjoyable characters, one charismatic wolf, and a warming romance, Spice and Wolf is able to use economics and trading to make this one uniquely entertaining anime. So let's take a look at my anime review of Spice and Wolf. The story of Spice and Wolf is interesting, and first being written as a light novel, the show as of now only covers volumes 1 through 5, and I believe skipping 4, and I believe it is out of 17 volumes, and with that it doesn't cover everything the show has to offer, but the things we do get are entertaining nonetheless. The show starts out with a traveling merchant, Kraft Lawrence, a man who one day stumbles upon a naked wolf girl in his cart, who happens to be, aside from Best Girl, the wise wolf Holo, a pagan deity who has turned into a human woman. And after a few events and feeling neglected by the town who used to worship her, she bargains with Lawrence to take her back to the north into her home. And that is the focus of the show, while still taking many detours along the way where they come across the church, thieves, wolves, and other traders. And the show, while being interesting with the concept of trade, it's not all the show has to deliver. In each of the arcs, they usually fall into a few areas. Either Lawrence does something that leads them to trouble, the church catches on to Holo's identity, which is supposed to be hidden because the church don't like deities like that, or some other traders are trying to mess with them. But there's one consistent that the show has, and that's the building of a relationship between the two main characters. We gradually see how the multiple obstacles push them to their own personal limits and things that will ultimately maybe push them apart. And while that may not sound very unique, the characters themselves make it a lot more interesting, being multi-dimensional in their own right. That's not to say the actual arcs aren't entertaining. Each arc seems to have one main character that it focuses on other than our two main characters, and its plot revolves around them. And the show does a good job of creating a sense of tension for the characters to test their own resolve and at times their loyalty to each other. The one negative or somewhat predictable nature is that most of the time each arc will end somewhat predictably or in a much more positive nature almost every time. Most of the time Kraft finds his way out using whatever means possible, but that doesn't mean the arcs in themselves aren't entertaining, it just won't shock you at the end. It just feels like there is no real repercussions to the events that do perspire. Luckily, the big focus is more on the two's relationship that grows over time, and for them to learn about each other, which the show does very well, but I'll talk more about that in a minute. As for the part that makes the show unique is that we get some good old lessons in trading, and being a show that taking place in around, I would like to say, the medieval European setting. I could be wrong, but anyways, it's trading the old-fashioned way, and the show does a decent job of explaining concept in a way in which you can learn more from it than maybe even school, because adding that it's part of the plot, it's also almost needed for you to somewhat understand the concept in some form or fashion. But even if you don't, the show is still enjoyable. Just base some things off people's reactions on whether it's good or bad, if you are lost. But for me, when I did understand what they were talking about, it did add another layer to what the show is telling me, and made me want to cheer for Kraft on his endeavors to reach his own personal goal, because you have to kind of be smart in order to work in this form of business, and I gained some respect for him as a person. But aside from that, the show does a great balance of tone, with lighthearted banter back and forth between the two, and the use of dialogue is beautifully done to convey the romance that starts to form, and the show even builds some dark tones at times that fit very well and don't feel out of place to fill in the times of desperation for the characters. Even though while sometimes I do feel the dialogue could feel a little repetitive, it's nothing too out of hand. And nonetheless, story-wise, while the show at times can be predictable at the end of arcs, it's still widely entertaining and informative thanks to Holo and Kraft and its great use and change of tone for the series. Like I mentioned throughout, so far the two main characters are the driving point for me when watching the show, and my personal favorite part. While being two decently different yet unique characters, they both adapt and grow together differently. When it comes to Holo, you most likely will have heard of her. She has a freaking army basically, but for good reason. Yes, she's a tsundere who loves to be wasted, which is kind of strange, but what's interesting about her is you can never truly know when her emotions that she shows are real or if she's just toying with Lawrence or the other people around him, which she seems to like to do a lot, because she is able to read people and act according to how they either want her to act or how she seems fit to act. But with the use and watching of her tell, you can get a sense at times of when she is actually mad, happy, or jealous, which is a different way to convey one's true emotions while hiding some of her others. Also, being the wise wolf that she is, she does become quite useful when helping out Lawrence in making deals, and this makes her not just some girl riding along for no reason and no use at all. Yet while being very strong and independent, she does have her moments of needing and wanting to rely on someone, which fits being that she was alone for a large portion of her life, and she wants somebody else to be there for her. Yet she is only one half of this coin. There is also Lawrence, who is very different to that of her. While he is greedy, selfish, dedicated, impulsive, smart, and caring, not saying Holo doesn't have some of these natures, these are very defining features of him, and he is one pushed to the brink and at times the cause of their troubles through sometimes his own greed or unwillingness to trust. While at times he does things for good reason, he still makes mistakes, but then grows to care much more for Holo and he begins to learn more than just about his own trade. Yet I think the thing I love most about their romance or relationship is like the entire relationship was kind of tsundere. They're both banter and fought back and forth. Holo changes according to how she thinks he wants her to act, yet whether or not the way she acts toward him at those times are real or not, there are moments where there is unspoken emotion that they know is there, but they just don't fully acknowledge or say anything about it. Such as an obvious sign would be whenever Lawrence meets up with another attractive girl, Holo then gets jealous toward that other girl, which is basically saying Holo likes Lawrence a lot in some fashion. That is a very obvious one. There are much more subtle hints in the show than just that. And while it might be strange, I kind of like that form of relationship because while it's like they might not be saying how they feel, they understand each other without needing to say anything. Yet when it comes to side characters, while none are distinctly bad, none stand out, which most likely comes with the problem of being a show that works with a moving tradesmen, because other than the two MCs, we never see a repeated character throughout the rest of the show and other arcs. The villains, I guess you could say for the most part, were rushed, and while there was foreshadowing for who they are or who they were going to be, I more just hated them in the end because they were assholes. And no real other reasons other than maybe the very last villain, which still was just kind of an asshole in the end. They weren't deep or interesting, but that's not to say that there weren't any enjoyable side characters. There were other characters I did quite enjoy, they just didn't get much to make them stand out. Either way, I believe Holo and Lawrence and their relationship together really carried the show for me, and what it made it the most enjoyable experience. This is one portion of the show that did not stand out for me, and that would be the art and the animation. From the beginning, I was not blown away, or not really impressed by the visuals from the beginning. While not bad, it just doesn't do much. Character designs are nothing special, while I do love the look of Holo. Colors are somewhat bland for the most part, but that's not to say the show doesn't have its moments. It does a good job at setting the tone for warmer and touching moments, and then darker and intense moments. This goes same for animation. Nothing too special, just enough to get the job done. Aside from that, it's a decent looking show, but not much else. As for the music though, that is another story. It's a very festival European type feel which fits its show's tone and setting well, and while a few times I felt a more heartwarming and calmer song could have fit a few scenes, the OST is beautiful. While maybe not the most memorable OST in the world, it's still good. It uses for the most part a large amount of flutes, organs, violins, and a few other instruments for the OST, yet the songs that do stand out for me, or the one song that does really stand out for me, is the first OP, which is a energetic yet entrancing song that captivates the calm and charismatic nature that the show can have, and while still feeling wistful. OP number 2 is very similar to the first, but for me I like the first one more. And the animations for both are actually very beautiful and also match the tone of the show. The animations show the mini characters from the arcs and that will show up in the show. As for the EDs, they are both much more upbeat than the OPs, while the second EDs a little more closer to the tone of the show, but both are still very good. Overall, the show has a very good OST and about average art and animation, and in the end, do what the show needs them to do. So to conclude, this is a beautiful romance with some comedy, tension, and heartfelt moments, with 2 great leads and added an economic lesson to go along with it. Even though some parts are sort of predictable and the show is technically not over, come on season 3, I think it is a definite must-watch if you like romances and learning about trading. Otherwise, shows that I would watch if you want one similar to this, I would give a look at one called Mushishi, where there isn't really much on the side of romance. We do follow a nomad who moves from town to town helping out those in need, but as for a show with romance somewhat similar to this, I would say Steins Gate, where there is another tsundere-ish relationship with 2 great leads. And oh, just for an interesting note, the English VA for the male leads for both these shows were the same, which made the relationship between the two seem even more similar. And while I have not seen this show, from what I know it is very similar to Spice and Wolf, in which 2 companions travel together to complete a goal and along the way begin to get closer and closer. So that is it for my review of Spice and Wolf. Let me know what you thought of the show, or if you plan on watching it now. Otherwise, that is it, and I will see you all in my next anime review, or whatever video I decide to make. So, peace out.